What if the fastest way to make someone realize your value is to stop making yourself constantly available? Think about that for a moment. When someone knows they can reach you at any hour, receive your attention whenever they want, and pull you back into the same conversation whenever they feel like it, your presence can slowly become predictable. And what is predictable is often taken for granted. This doesn't mean you should suddenly become cold, disappear without explanation, or play games with someone's emotions. That's not strength. That's performance. Real strength is much quieter. It begins when you stop organizing your entire emotional world around another person's attention. You don't need to answer every message immediately just because you're afraid that waiting will make her lose interest. You don't need to cancel your plans because she suddenly becomes available. You don't need to keep checking your phone because you're wondering whether she has replied. You have a life, and your life existed before her. That matters. Because when your attention comes from desperation, it feels different from attention that comes from choice. Desperation says, I need you to respond so I can feel secure. Confidence says, I enjoy talking to you, but my entire day doesn't depend on whether you do. That difference is subtle. Imagine two men. One is constantly available. Every message gets an immediate response. Every invitation becomes a priority. Every moment of distance makes him increase his effort. The other has direction. He has responsibilities. He has friends. He has ambitions. He takes care of himself. When he's with her, he's genuinely present. But when he's away, he's not sitting around waiting for his phone to light up. Which presence carries more weight? Not because one man is pretending to be unavailable, because one man actually has somewhere to go. That's the principle. Your goal isn't to manufacture scarcity. Your goal is to stop living as though your attention has no value. And once you understand that, something changes in your relationships. You become more selective. You stop responding to every mixed signal with greater effort. You stop trying to earn affection through endless availability. You stop thinking that being constantly present will somehow guarantee that someone chooses you, because it won't. You can give someone unlimited attention and still be taken for granted. You can answer every call and still be disrespected. You can make yourself emotionally available every second and still discover that the other person doesn't value what you're offering. Why? Because value isn't created simply by giving more. Sometimes value is revealed through what you are willing to protect: your time, your energy, your attention, your standards, your peace. When you protect those things, you communicate something without saying a word. My life matters too. And that is not arrogance. That's self-respect. So don't disappear just to make her wonder where you are. Don't ignore messages to create anxiety. Don't pretend you're busy when you're actually sitting beside your phone waiting for her. Instead, become genuinely busy building a life that doesn't require constant romantic validation. Go after your goals, strengthen your body, develop your skills, spend time with people who matter, docrecate something, learn something, become more disciplined. And when she enters your world, let her experience the best version of your attention, not because you're afraid of losing her, but because you're capable of giving attention without losing yourself. That's the difference between being available and being valuable. And once someone realizes your presence is something they can no longer automatically assume, they begin to understand what your absence could actually mean. Because the fear of losing you doesn't begin when you threaten to leave. It begins when she realizes you were never afraid to live without her. And once you stop being constantly available, the next question becomes even more important. What exactly is there for her to miss? Because distance alone doesn't create value. If you disappear from someone's life but have built nothing meaningful while you were there, your absence may not create the effect you imagined. The real difference comes from the quality of the experience you bring into someone's life. Think about it. People don't miss a phone notification. They miss how someone made them feel. They miss the laughter, the conversations that went deeper than small talk, the feeling of being understood, the energy of being around someone who had direction, confidence, and a life of his own. That's why your goal shouldn't be to make yourself scarce. Your goal should be to make your presence meaningful. And that begins with building a life that doesn't revolve around the relationship. Have something you're pursuing when she isn't around. Have goals that demand your attention. Have friendships that keep you connected to the world. Have interests that make you curious. Have standards that don't disappear simply because you're attracted to someone. Because when your entire identity becomes the man she's dating, you slowly lose the individuality that made you attractive in the first place. You become predictable. Every conversation is about the relationship. Every decision is based on her availability. Every emotional high depends on whether she's giving it attention. And eventually, you aren't bringing a life into the relationship. You're asking the relationship to become your life. That's dangerous. A healthy relationship should add to your life, not replace it. So imagine something different. You have your own mission. You wake up knowing what you're working toward. You have things you're excited about. You have people who respect you. You have responsibilities that matter. And when you're with her, you aren't distracted by the fear of losing her. You're actually present. You're listening. You're laughing. You're enjoying the moment. You're not constantly checking whether she's impressed. You're not trying to prove that you're worthy. You're simply living. That creates a completely different emotional experience. Because she isn't just encountering a man who wants her. She's encountering a man who already has a life and is choosing to share part of it with her. That distinction matters. Desire is powerful, but desperation changes its meaning. When you want someone but don't need them to validate your existence, your energy becomes calmer. You can appreciate her without worshiping her. You can care without clinging. You can pursue without abandoning yourself. And if the relationship ends, you don't collapse because your identity wasn't built around keeping her. That's the kind of value that can be missed. Not because you deliberately created pain, not because you tried to make her jealous, not because you vanished without explanation, but because your presence genuinely contributed something meaningful. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot become valuable overnight because you want someone to fear losing you. You have to build the value first. You have to become the person you would respect even if nobody were watching. That means improving your discipline, improving your communication, taking responsibility for your mistakes, learning to control your emotions, developing competence, protecting your standards, and becoming comfortable with your own company. Then something interesting happens. You stop thinking so much about whether she will miss you because you're too busy becoming someone you're proud to be. And ironically, that is when your absence can become more noticeable. She remembers the man who had purpose, the man who made her laugh, the man who listened, the man who didn't need constant reassurance, the man whose life continued whether she was beside him or not. That is what creates something worth missing. So don't ask, how can I make her afraid of losing me? Ask a deeper question. If I disappeared from her life tomorrow, what meaningful experience would she actually miss? Build that answer through the life you live, because genuine value doesn't need to be announced. It is experienced and remembered. And once you have built a life that doesn't depend on her attention, another shift becomes necessary. Stop chasing mixed signals, because nothing destroys your sense of value faster than repeatedly pursuing someone who keeps giving you uncertainty. Think about what happens when her interest changes from one day to the next. One day she is warm, The next day she is distant. Then she suddenly becomes interested again. You respond by increasing your effort. You send another message. You explain yourself. You ask what's wrong. You try harder. You become more available. And without realizing it, you have entered a cycle where her inconsistency determines your behavior. That's where you need to stop. Not because you want to punish her. Not because you want to make her anxious, but because you need to understand what her behavior is actually telling you. Words matter, but patterns matter more. Someone can say they care about you while consistently giving you very little time, effort, or consideration. Someone can say they're confused while continuing to expect your attention. Someone can say they aren't ready for a relationship while keeping you emotionally attached. And if you respond to all of that by chasing harder, you teach yourself a dangerous lesson, that someone else's uncertainty requires you to work harder for their approval. It doesn't. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to observe. You are allowed to say, I like you, but I don't want to participate in something where I'm the only person moving it forward. That's not playing hard to get. That's understanding reciprocity. Healthy attraction doesn't require one person to constantly convince the other. There should be movement from both sides. Interest should create effort. Effort should create trust. Trust should create consistency. And consistency creates the foundation for something real. But when you're constantly chasing mixed signals, you never reach that foundation. You're always trying to interpret the next message. You're always wondering what she meant. You're always analyzing the delay. You're always trying to predict her mood. And eventually, your attention becomes consumed by someone else's behavior. That's not attraction. That's emotional dependence. So what happens when you stop chasing? You don't suddenly become cold. You simply stop overinvesting. If she reaches out, you respond naturally. If she makes an effort, you meet that effort. If she pulls away, you don't sprint after her. You give the situation room to reveal itself. Because space can tell you things that pressure never will. If she genuinely values the connection, she has an opportunity to show it. If she doesn't, you receive information that saves you months of confusion. Either way, you gain clarity. And clarity is more valuable than temporary reassurance. Because you don't want someone who stays simply because you chase them into staying. You want someone who chooses you freely. That is the difference between being wanted and being tolerated. And here's something else you need to understand. Walking away from mixed signals isn't about trying to trigger her fear of losing you. It's about proving to yourself that you won't abandon your own standards just because you're attracted to someone. That's the real test. Can you remain calm when she becomes distant? Can you resist the urge to send another message? Can you tolerate uncertainty without desperately trying to control the outcome? Can you accept that someone might walk away and still know that you'll be okay? If you can, your entire approach to relationships changes. You stop chasing reactions. You start observing actions. You stop trying to win attention. You start looking for mutual interest. You stop asking, how do I make her choose me? And you start asking, is this person actually choosing me? That question protects you. Because the moment you stop rewarding inconsistency with unlimited attention, you establish a boundary without needing a dramatic speech. You simply demonstrate that your time and emotional energy are valuable. And if she recognizes that value, she has the opportunity to meet you there. If she doesn't chase, you move forward because your standards should never disappear just because your feelings become stronger. And once you stop chasing mixed signals, you begin to understand something most people completely overlook. Familiarity can create comfort, but too much predictability can make someone stop noticing what they have. This is where emotional contrast becomes important. Now, don't misunderstand the idea. Emotional contrast does not mean becoming hot and cold. It doesn't mean showering someone with affection today and deliberately ignoring them tomorrow. That's not confidence. That's emotional manipulation, and eventually it destroys trust. Real contrast comes from having a full life outside the relationship. You can be deeply engaged when you're together and completely comfortable being apart. You can listen carefully without needing constant reassurance. You can be affectionate without becoming dependent. You can enjoy her company without making her the center of your universe. That balance creates something powerful. Presence without dependence. Think about someone who is always trying to keep your attention. Every conversation becomes longer than necessary. Every moment apart becomes a problem. Every free hour must be filled with communication. Eventually, even genuine affection can start feeling like pressure. Now imagine the opposite. When you're together, you're fully there. Your phone isn't controlling you. You're not distracted by trying to impress her. You're not calculating every word. You're simply enjoying the experience. Then, you go back to your own life. You work, you train, you spend time with friends, you pursue your goals. You don't need to create an excuse for your absence, because your life naturally has things that deserve your attention. That creates contrast without manipulation. She experiences your presence as something intentional rather than something automatic. And that distinction can matter enormously, because when attention is unlimited, it can become background noise. But when attention is given thoughtfully, people tend to notice it more. Think about music. If a song played every second of every day, eventually you would stop hearing it. But silence makes sound noticeable. The same principle can apply to relationships. Your goal isn't to become silent. Your goal is to avoid becoming noise. Be present when it matters. Be engaged when you're together. Give genuine attention. But don't sacrifice your entire identity to maintain constant connection. And this is where many people make a mistake. They think that if they keep giving more, they'll become harder to lose, so they give more messages, more reassurance, more gifts, more availability, more explanations. But quantity isn't the same as value. Sometimes giving more simply teaches someone to expect more. Then the moment you stop, it feels like you're withholding something. Instead, build a relationship where both people understand that attention is valuable, because both people have lives of their own. She has her world, you have yours, and the relationship becomes the place where those two worlds meet, not the place where one person disappears into the other. That is emotional maturity, and it also protects attraction, because there is still something to discover. You continue growing. She continues growing. You don't become completely predictable because you're not standing still. Your stories change, your goals evolve, your experiences expand. You bring new energy into the relationship because you're actually living. That's why the strongest way to create contrast is not to manipulate someone's emotions. It's to keep developing yourself. Become more interesting because you are interested in life. Become more confident because you've done difficult things. Become more attractive because you take care of yourself. Become more grounded because you've learned to handle uncertainty. Then your presence carries weight naturally. And if she ever imagines life without you, she isn't imagining the disappearance of someone who simply sent messages all day. She's imagining the absence of a person who brought something distinctive into her life. That's a completely different kind of loss. So don't manufacture emotional highs and lows. Create a life where connection is meaningful, because neither person needs constant access to feel secure. Be warm without becoming needy. Be available without becoming dependent. Be loving without abandoning yourself. Because when your presence is intentional, your absence doesn't need to be dramatic to be noticed. It simply leaves a space that cannot be filled by constant noise. And eventually, everything comes down to one principle. Consequences, not punishment, not threats, not dramatic ultimatums, consequences. If someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, disrespects your time, or gives you inconsistent effort, you don't need to make a speech about how much they might lose. You simply change your participation. If the effort is mutual, you continue investing. If the effort disappears, you stop carrying the entire relationship on your shoulders. That is where the possibility of losing you becomes real. Because words are easy, anyone can say, "I'm going to leave." But when your standards are actually connected to your actions, people understand that your presence isn't guaranteed. And this isn't about creating fear, it's about creating clarity. If she knows you'll remain regardless of how she treats you, there is little reason for the dynamic to change. But when she sees that you respect yourself enough to walk away from repeated disrespect, she understands something important. You care about her, but you won't sacrifice yourself to keep her. That distinction changes everything. And if she chooses to step up, you can meet her there. If she doesn't, you have your answer, because the strongest boundary isn't a warning. It's the action you take when your boundary is crossed. Let your standards speak quietly, and let your actions make the message impossible to misunderstand. And now we reach the most important part. The ultimate power isn't making her afraid to lose you. It's becoming completely comfortable with walking away from what doesn't respect you. Because if you need her to fear losing you, then your emotional power still depends on her reaction. Real confidence sounds different. It says, "I want you, but I will be okay without you." That mindset changes how you date. You stop tolerating disrespect because you're afraid she'll leave. You stop chasing someone who repeatedly pulls away. You stop negotiating for basic effort. You stop trying to prove why you're worthy of being chosen. Instead, you observe. You allow people to reveal themselves through their actions. And if she values you, she will have the opportunity to meet you with the same energy. If she doesn't, you don't need revenge. You don't need to make her jealous. You don't need to convince her that she made a mistake. You simply move forward, because the person who is genuinely willing to walk away cannot easily be controlled by the fear of being abandoned. And ironically, that's what makes his presence different. He's not valuable because he threatens to leave. He's valuable because he has standards strong enough to leave when those standards are repeatedly ignored. So don't make your mission, "How can I trigger her fear of losing me?" Make your mission, "How can I become a man who never loses himself trying to keep someone else?" Build your purpose. Protect your peace. Give love freely, but never at the cost of your dignity. And if someone chooses to walk away, let them. The right person won't need to be frightened into recognizing your value. Your greatest power is not making her afraid to lose you. It's knowing you will never lose yourself just to make her stay.